What's going on, Dub Nation? The offseason is heating up with storylines that might not look like blockbusters at first glance. But if you're paying attention, there's some pretty exciting stuff happening behind the curtain. And one of the biggest talking points right now isn't a trade rumor. It isn't a free agency splash. It's actually something much simpler, but way more telling. Draymond Green and Jimmy Butler were spotted working out together. Now, on paper, that might not sound like the kind of news that changes the league. Two all-stars sweating it out in the gym in the middle of the summer, nothing new, right? But when you put this into the bigger context of what makes championship teams really click, this is the type of thing that can matter a whole lot more than people think. See, one of the biggest secrets behind the Warriors dynasty wasn't just the talent on the roster. It wasn't just the shooting or the spacing or even the coaching. It was the chemistry. The bond that those guys built off the court showed up in every possession on the court. Think back to the early days when Golden State was turning from a fun young team into an actual powerhouse. The roster didn't change that much. The most significant shift was moving Draymond into the starting lineup instead of David Lee. That single move transformed the whole dynamic, and it worked because Draymond had already built a connection with Steph and Klay. That synergy turned them from promising to dominant almost overnight. And that's why seeing Draymond out there with Jimmy Butler in the offseason is such a big deal. It's not just about staying in shape or getting shots up. It's about building that bond, testing each other's games, figuring out how they complement each other, and carrying that connection into the season. Jimmy came in last year and instantly looked like he belonged. His fit with the Warriors system was smooth, almost natural. But just because something fits doesn't mean you can't sharpen it, refine it, and make it even more dangerous. When stars spend their summer grinding together, that's when you know they're locked in with one goal in mind: winning a championship. Now, if we zoom out a little bit and think about what championship teams really need, synergy is at the very top of the list. It's not just players vibing with each other, it's top to bottom. From ownership to the front office, to the coach, to the roster. Everyone pulling in the same direction. Every dynasty you can think of in NBA history had that sense of unity. And for the Warriors, that unity used to show up in the smallest details. Team dinners, long workouts, guys just spending time together outside of the spotlight. Those little things added up into something massive when the lights came on in May and June. Lately, though, we haven't seen as much of that. This group has been through ups and downs. And while they've still been competitive, that magic chemistry hasn't always been there. That's what makes these workouts stand out. It's a signal that the leaders of this team are serious about reestablishing that culture. The kind of culture that wins rings, not just playoff rounds. And let's be real, the Warriors can't afford a slow start. If they want to be seen as legitimate title contenders, they have to come out of the gate strong. We're talking about winning 7 out of their first 10 games, setting the tone early, and staying out of that dreaded play-in zone. You want to be in the top 6, you want to control your destiny, and you want to build momentum instead of chasing it. That's why this off-season grind matters. If the core is sharp, if they're already in sync before training camp even begins, that can give them a massive edge. Now, imagine if Steph Curry joins some of these sessions too. You've got Steph, Draymond, and Jimmy putting in work together, sharpening each other, and setting the standard. That's the kind of energy that spreads through an entire roster. Younger guys start buying in, role players feed off that intensity, and suddenly the whole group feels connected before the season even tips off. That's when you start to see the Warriors turn into more than just a team. They become a unit, almost like a family, and those kind of squads are always the hardest to beat. It also makes me think back to that 2022 title run. That year, the Warriors didn't make huge roster changes either. They brought Klay back, but outside of that, it was basically the same group that had struggled the year before. The difference? Chemistry. The core believed in each other, the trust was there, and when the postseason rolled around, they were firing on all cylinders. That's exactly the kind of vibe that Draymond and Jimmy are trying to recreate right now in these workouts. And here's the thing. While we're all talking about Jonathan Kuminga's contract situation or which free agents the team might add, this behind-the-scenes bonding could actually be more important. Don't get me wrong, roster moves matter. But without chemistry, without that built-in trust, you're just a collection of names. The Warriors have learned that the hard way. Whenever they've had their synergy at full power, they've been basically unbeatable. Whenever it slipped, the whole thing looked fragile. So if these off-season workouts are happening consistently, if they're not just one-off sessions, but an ongoing thing, then Dub Nation should be thrilled. Because that's the foundation of something bigger. That's how you set the tone for a season where the goal isn't just to make the playoffs, it's to make another run at the trophy. And you can already see the strategy here. Get the core aligned first, and let everything else fall into place around it. What excites me even more is how this energy could bleed into training camp. Training camp isn't just about drills and scrimmages. It's where the tone for the entire year gets set. If the leaders are locked in from day one, everybody else falls in line. Whether it's young players on Exhibit 10 contracts, veterans fighting for minutes, or role players trying to carve out their niche, they all feed off that intensity. And if the vibe is we're here to win together, then everyone buys in. That's when you start building something special. Now, of course, not everything is picture perfect. We all know Kuminga is out there in Miami, working out, making headlines of his own. And while some people are reading into it like he's trying to get closer to the Heat, it's hard to say what's really going on. What we do know is that he's still a restricted free agent, and his future with the Warriors is hanging in the balance. Whether that ends with him signing the qualifying offer or the front office making a move, that part of the story isn't finished yet. But here's the key difference. Kuminga's situation is about contracts and negotiations. What Draymond and Jimmy are doing is about culture and mindset. One is business. The other is basketball at its purest form. And when you talk about culture, few players embody that grind more than Jimmy Butler. He's built his entire career on work ethic, on toughness, on pushing himself and his teammates to the edge. Pairing that mentality with Draymond's fire is exactly the type of mix the Warriors need if they want to recapture their identity. Think about it. Two of the most competitive, hardest-working guys in the league locking in together before the season even starts. That sends a message, not just to the locker room, but to the rest of the NBA. And here's where it gets interesting. Miami has a track record of turning these situations into something real. We've seen Pat Riley and Eric Spoelstra build their roster in unconventional ways. They're not afraid to take a young player, mold him into something more, and suddenly he becomes a key piece of a contender. And the Heat, as we know, are never shy about making a splash when the opportunity is there. That's why Kuminga working out in Miami raises eyebrows. It might be nothing, but it might also be a signal. Maybe it's his camp testing the waters, maybe it's Miami planting seeds, or maybe it's just noise. But either way, it's impossible not to connect the dots when you look at the bigger picture. For the Warriors, this is delicate. Kuminga is one of the few young guys on this roster with genuine star potential. He has the athleticism, the versatility, and the upside that you don't want to just give away for pennies on the dollar. At the same time, his fit with Golden State hasn't always been smooth. There have been stretches where he's looked frustrated with his role, where the minutes haven't matched the hype, and where it feels like both sides are still trying to figure out if this is truly the right long-term marriage. That's why trade rumors keep circling. It's not that the Warriors want to lose him. It's that they're weighing how to maximize their window while Steph, Draymond, and Clay are still around. And if Kuminga isn't going to reach his peak in time to match that window, maybe the front office has to consider options. Miami as a landing spot makes sense in some ways. They love athletes who can defend multiple positions, who can play hard-nosed basketball, and who have the tools to grow within their system. Kuminga checks all of those boxes. The Heat also aren't afraid of giving a young guy the minutes and the responsibility he craves. So from his perspective, that probably looks appealing. But from Golden State's side, the question becomes, what's the return? Because as much as Pat Riley is willing to take swings, he's also notorious for protecting his young core. He's not handing over a Jamie Jaquez Jr. or a Nikola Jovic unless the deal absolutely blows him away. Picks? Maybe. A veteran with an expiring contract like Terry Rozier? Possible, but that doesn't exactly scream fair value for a player with Kuminga's upside. This is where the business side of basketball collides with the emotional side. Fans see Kuminga as part of the future. They imagine him blossoming into that next great warrior who carries the torch once the current core eventually fades. But front offices have to balance that dream with reality. Reality is that the Warriors are in win-now mode. Every decision is made through the lens of how does this help us maximize Steph's championship window. And if Kuminga's development timeline doesn't match that, they have to at least consider whether moving him for pieces that fit right now is the smarter move. But here's where things get tricky. The Warriors don't want to repeat past mistakes. They don't want another situation where a promising young player leaves and then turns into a star somewhere else. Because that would sting. Dub Nation has lived through enough tough decisions, and it never gets easier watching someone you drafted blossom in another uniform. That's why this whole thing feels like such a balancing act. And remember, the clock is ticking. Training camp isn't months away anymore. It's right around the corner. The front office doesn't have forever to figure this out. If Kuminga is still in limbo, if the contract situation drags out, it risks becoming a distraction when the team should be focused on building chemistry. The last thing you want is uncertainty hanging over the locker room when you're trying to set the tone for a season that already has sky-high expectations. On the flip side, there's a scenario where none of this Miami talk means anything. Kuminga signs the qualifying offer, comes back motivated, and uses this year to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that he belongs as a cornerstone for the Warriors. And honestly, that might be the most powerful outcome. A locked-in Kuminga who feels like he has something to prove could be the X factor that changes the entire dynamic of this team. His defense, his ability to run the floor, his flashes of scoring ability, those are tools the Warriors can absolutely weaponize if he's bought in. Imagine a lineup where Steph, Jimmy, Draymond, Clay, and Kuminga are clicking on all cylinders. That's scary. That's not just a playoff team. That's a team nobody wants to face in a 7-game series. But whether that vision becomes reality depends on both sides. The Warriors have to trust him enough to give him the role he wants. Kuminga has to buy into the system enough to maximize his minutes. It's a partnership, and partnerships only work if both sides are committed. That's why all this Miami noise feels so important. It's not just about one player in one city. It's about what it represents. It's about whether Kuminga and the Warriors are truly aligned heading into this season, or whether we're watching the beginning of a split. And while that drama unfolds, the workouts between Draymond and Jimmy serve as a reminder of what really matters. Synergy, chemistry, unity. Those are the ingredients of championships. Not rumors, not headlines, not negotiations. Work, real work. The type that happens in the dark when nobody's watching. The type that turns into something unstoppable when the lights come on. If Kuminga is part of that, if he buys into that energy, then the Warriors might just have the balance they need. If he's not, if his eyes are drifting toward Miami or anywhere else, then it's up to the front office to make a call. Because in this league, standing still is the same as falling behind. And here's the reality for Dub Nation. This team is still Steph Curry's team. As long as Steph is out there, the window is open. But that window doesn't last forever. Every season matters. Every offseason matters. And every decision about who's in and who's out matters more than ever. That's why these storylines are so fascinating. They're not just gossip. They're the puzzle pieces of what could be another title run or another year of falling short. So whether Kuminga ends up in Miami, stays in Golden State, or something else entirely, the truth is the same. The Warriors are trying to build synergy from the ground up again. Draymond and Jimmy grinding together is proof of that. The front office working through the Kuminga question is part of that. And the rest of the roster waiting to see how it all shakes out is just the reality of life in the NBA. It's messy, it's complicated, but it's also what makes it so compelling. Because when the ball finally tips in October, all that matters is whether the work done in the summer translates into wins on the floor. Before we continue, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any exclusive Dubs updates. Let's keep going. The whispers around the Golden State Warriors have been growing louder in recent days, and now they have reached the level of a full-blown rumor storm after head coach Steve Kerr allegedly delivered a stunning message concerning one of his own players. According to insiders who claim to be close to the situation, Kerr has been overheard telling associates the player in question will not play with me anymore, a phrase that has instantly sparked endless speculation about a potential rupture inside the team. The Warriors, a franchise long admired for stability, chemistry, and Kerr's steady leadership, are now facing questions about whether that harmonious image has begun to crack. Fans and journalists alike are piecing together fragments of information, attempting to identify which individual has triggered such a strong declaration from Kerr, a man usually associated with calm words and measured approaches. The NBA community thrives on drama, and the suggestion that a high-profile coach like Kerr has reached a breaking point with a player adds an entirely new layer of tension to the Warriors season. Even without names officially confirmed, the air of mystery is enough to keep the conversation at the top of sports talk shows and social media timelines. What makes this rumor particularly fascinating is the rare glimpse it offers into the usually guarded world of professional basketball locker rooms, where disputes, arguments, and personality clashes are often hidden beneath a carefully managed surface. If Kerr truly did express such a sentiment, it could mark a shift in the balance of power within the Warriors, a team that has lived through multiple eras defined by stars, egos, and the constant challenge of keeping everyone aligned with the bigger goal of winning championships. The coach has been known as a communicator who values dialogue and compromise, so for him to draw such a firm line suggests the conflict may have reached a stage beyond reconciliation. Supporters speculate whether this is tied to playing time frustrations, off-court disagreements, or strategic differences that have been brewing over months. The Warriors dynasty has always seemed resilient, but even dynasties are not immune to internal fractures. If Kerr has indeed reached his limit, this could trigger ripple effects across the league as rival franchises prepare for the possibility of a talented but now displaced player becoming available sooner rather than later. The history of the Warriors under Kerr has been filled with both triumph and turbulence, from championship parades to dramatic on-court confrontations that later became legendary anecdotes. Yet never before has the coach himself been painted as the central figure in a potential split of this magnitude. Observers recall moments in the past where stars like Draymond Green and Kevin Durant clashed, and Kerr played the role of mediator, finding ways to stabilize emotions while keeping the team focused on the bigger picture. This time, however, the alleged word suggests Kerr may no longer be willing to mediate, but rather to cut ties entirely. Such a stance raises questions about leadership, authority, and the delicate ecosystem of modern NBA franchises, where coaches must manage not only X's and O's, but also the complex personalities of millionaire athletes. The possibility that Kerr has chosen to declare a final boundary hints at either a betrayal of trust or a consistent pattern of disruption that could no longer be tolerated. The speculation feeds into a narrative that the Warriors, despite their championship pedigree, are standing at a crossroads between preserving their legacy or being consumed by internal discord. For the fans, the uncertainty has been both thrilling and unsettling. On one hand, rumors like these breathe excitement into the season, giving endless content for talk shows, podcasts, and online debates where theories about the player's identity are traded with the passion of courtroom arguments. On the other hand, supporters worry what this could mean for the team's immediate chances of contending, particularly as they navigate an increasingly competitive Western Conference. The Warriors' success has been rooted in cohesion, the ability to blend talent and strategy into something greater than the sum of its parts. If Kerr truly cannot coexist with a particular player, the ripple effect on morale and chemistry could be devastating. Players sense tension, and locker rooms often amplify even the smallest of conflicts. It is not uncommon for athletes to side with one party or another, dividing what was once a unified group into factions. The question now is whether the front office will step in to mediate or whether Kerr's authority will be fully supported, potentially resulting in a trade or release that reshapes the roster and, perhaps, the franchise's future direction. Until official statements are made, the rumor lives in a space where imagination and reality blur together, each piece of hearsay fanning the flames of speculation. Reporters camp at press conferences, waiting for the moment Kerr might address the whispers, while players are approached in hallways for comments they mostly refuse to provide. This silence only deepens the intrigue, as the absence of denial is interpreted by many as confirmation in disguise. What is clear is that the Warriors, long accustomed to being at the center of basketball's brightest spotlight, are now caught in a storm that could redefine their trajectory. Whether this ends with a player being moved, a public reconciliation, or a shocking revelation of misunderstanding, the story has already cemented itself as one of the most captivating sagas of the season. In the NBA, perception often becomes reality, and with Kerr's supposed words circulating everywhere, the perception is one of division. Only time will reveal if this rumor transforms into fact or remains a tantalizing piece of sports mythology whispered in bars, podcasts, and message boards long after the current season concludes. Stay updated exclusively with the latest Dub Nation news. Subscribe to our channel and hit the like button to keep getting daily updates on the Warriors. Don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments. Your input is essential for the Dubs community. Stay tuned for the next video.